Hello, I'm Leila McKinnon. Welcome to A Current Affair. Today, a shocked world watched as the seat of US democracy came under attack. Riots turned deadly when protesters stormed the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Politicians gathered to formally accept the election result cowered under their chairs and were evacuated under armed guard. The president-elect calling for calm, while the president, well, he isn't exactly helping to placate the situation. US political expert Professor Joseph Siracusa joins me now. And Professor, today's invasion of the Capitol building has been described as everything from a peaceful protest to a treasonous coup attempt conducted by terrorists. How would you describe these extraordinary events?
Well, Leila, I had the opportunity last night to see the whole thing. I watched the Trump supporters arrive in Washington at 4:30 a.m. Melbourne time. And they were introduced by a couple people who were founders of the Tea Party. That is a very moderate organization about political reform. And they looked like pretty ordinary people. They weren't terrorists or anything like that. And it's quite clear that they'd gone to Washington to protest. Now, they are protesting. They are people who were going to take over the people's house. They showed up. The police resisted them, and then you notice how easily they got into the building. It's like no one's watching, the 535 legislatures. So they get in the building, and they're like tourists. They're sort of gawking at the statues and the ceiling, and they're very polite. They're not doing what my generation did when we were anti-war and the civil rights movement. They didn't trash anything. They didn't spoil anything. They didn't burn anything. They didn't steal anything. They'd come to protest, and I thought it was very appropriate. The people had come to take over the people's house. Yes, they were trespassing, but by the time the New York Times got done with it, it's about a rebellion, an insurrection, a mob, and a riot. Now, nothing could be further from the truth. These were not what was going on. And I was staggered that none of the legislators actually hung back to talk to these people. Now, during the course of this, the only shots fired were by a Capitol Hill policeman who shot a 41-year-old woman, and I'll give her name. Her name is Alicia Babbitt, 41-year-old woman who is a 14-year veteran of the Air Force, four tours of duty. And this guy just put his hand through this window area where she was trying to come through, and he shot her. She's completely unarmed. He just shot an unarmed person, and there's a very heavy price to pay for that. But by the afternoon rolled on, as all the legislators are talking about why they should certify the results of the Electoral Commission, they talk about the fine job that the people did protecting them from the rebellion or the riot or what's going on. I'm telling you, while the president had an obligation to tamp this down, and he did, on his YouTube or his Twitter account. These people got very excited, but it was always a protest, and it did not morph into a riot until they were attacked later on. So I'm a little worried here, first of all, at the lack of security on Capitol Hill. I mean, if it were a real riot, a lot of people would be dead, as a matter of fact. And in the past, 1934, we had the bonus march of the soldiers, and President Hoover sent the army out to crush these people with their horses, burn their tents, and all the rest of it. We've had some real riots in Washington. Historically speaking, this wasn't one of them. This was a protest that went wrong.
Okay, but it's not just them, is it? They want to overturn the election, but so do some senators, and apparently more than half of the Republican conference voted to overturn that pro-Biden result in Arizona, and that was after that attack. I mean, could this election result be overturned?
Well, it probably won't be. I mean, it's almost zero, but I heard a number of the legislators today talking about why it should be, in terms of how various states departed from the rules when with the voting machines and the rest of it. They make a powerful argument, but they can't get anyone to hear about it. Various courts have said there's no standing, particularly for the president, but they do make a case, as a matter of fact. Now, the thing is, the Democrats should have been celebrating the victory of the two Democratic senators last night, because now they are in a position to control the legislature, that is, the judicial appointments, the cabinet appointments, and the very shape of the legislation itself. So it should have been a great victory, and it was all lost in this. So everyone now is talking about how this rebellion has been put down, and Trump can't be held accountable for it, though there are people. The National Manufacturers Association is asking Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment and remove Trump from office as unfit. A number of people in the House of Representatives are already drafting articles of impeachment tonight. A little late in the game for that. And people in the New York Times think that he's committed treason by asking these people to do that. Now, Trump's not smart enough to create an army of people who are going to die for him. These people who showed up today, Leila, are the 70 million Americans who've been left behind by globalization. They didn't get the coronavirus checks. Their standard of living has fallen. They're having food security, income security. They can't feed their kids. They can't pay the tuition fees. These are people who are sliding backwards. They're incredibly frustrated. These are the people who showed up in Washington, not just to overthrow the election results. They never intended to do that. They can't do that. It's beyond their ability. But what they came was to protest the indifference in Congress to what's going on. And Congress has been indifferent to these people for about 20 years, according to the best research. So they just showed up today and said the people are here. And I think it's ironical they took over the people's house.
Okay, Joseph Siracusa, thank you. The Democrats have a big job ahead of them. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.